Come, speak up, my little man. What are you afraid of most? "I's most afraid of you, Grandpa," said the child. The old man started, and it seemed to him that he was standing over the Dorothy of other days. As a child, she would have answered thus. "Well, I was wrong," he muttered, "for I'm a fact, and not a fancy. Some people might call me a brutal fact." "Are you, Grandpa?" asked the child. Again Arlington started. "Certainly, Tommy. Certainly," he answered. And yet, through his brain, a flock of strange thoughts were flying about on restless wings. Perhaps the lie about Santa Claus Tommy could believe. The lies about the parrot, the goblins, and the fairies. Yes, but the lie that seemed most real, the most overwhelming, the most terrible, was the lie that he, the grandfather, had lived all his life. Hello, my name is Virgil, and this is Literally Books. Today, I want to talk about a actually really kind of special thing that I found. I really feel like this is kind of like an amazing, for me, discovery of a novel, and that's Tod Robbins' novel from 1917, The Unholy Three, also appearing sometimes as The Terrible Three and Three Freaks as well. I think Three Freaks is the title of a publication that happened in 1935. Here in this edition of Fantastic Novels magazine from 1948, it is under the title of The Terrible Three. To my knowledge, there's no difference in the publications. I don't know, there's not a ton of information about this work itself, although to me, this is a actually pretty influential story. And apart from all that, maybe the way I should start this is by saying what it's like to read it. And that's what I really want to start with, and then we'll get into everything else. What was this novel like? I started reading this just randomly, right? This is a cool magazine. I saw it. I'm like, this is kind of neat. It'd be kind of a neat thing. And all those guys came back from Pulp Fest. They had these cool pulp magazines and everything. And I ran across this, and I thought, this is interesting. I think I'll pick this up. What is this Terrible Three novel? And I found out it was made into a silent film twice under the same title, The Unholy Three, both starring Lon Chaney, not Lon Chaney Jr., who played the Wolfman, but Lon Chaney, once as a completely silent film in, I think, 25, and there was a remake of that movie in 1930 that was Lon Chaney's, I believe, first and only speaking part. I believe he died of lung cancer shortly after that. Actually, if you look at the Tod Robbins Wikipedia, this magazine is in that article, right? Is used as an image in that article. So we're going to talk about the novel, and I'm also going to do a flip through from this. We're going to talk about it first. So what was the experience like for reading this? To me, this novel, and I might cut this out, reading this novel was like some really unusual combination of extremely good writing and gothic fiction. If I were to do a hot take, I would say this is like if Steinbeck had written a gothic novel. That's kind of what this feels like. I do not feel that is an exaggeration or an overstatement. The level of quality to the writing is really high. This is a really well-written novel, very readable. I found that the themes that Tod Robbins introduces into this novel that he supports throughout and maintains. It's not supernatural at all. There's no supernatural elements to it. Probably it reminds me of, I think, two other things that I've talked about on this channel, both of which had like slight issues. One would be Dorothy Scarborough's The Wind, which has an absolutely outstanding beginning. And then just the writing is still good. It becomes, to me, not very interesting after a certain point. It becomes just a novel and doesn't do a whole lot after a certain point. And the other story is Whelan by Charles Brockton Brown. maybe the first, or I think it is considered to be the first American Gothic novel. That book I thought was really great. Its central conceit, it's like it's the thing, the element that it uses, right, for its story, this sort of narrative element that it's using, it might seem a little contrived to some people. I think it's well done in the novel, but I think there's an opinion that it's a bit contrived, and I think it works, but there's some criticism of it. A very similar thing happens in this novel, but it does not feel contrived here. Again, I just can't say that it's like it has all the strengths of those two works, but it doesn't have shortcomings, right? The only thing I guess you would say is it's not like wildly crazy. It's not like a true horror novel. It's probably closer to a thriller, maybe in that sense. I just, or just a Gothic novel, and I just was really blown away, honestly. I was reading this and just super duper impressed. I really couldn't. I'm really surprised that we don't talk about this work by Tod Robbins, not to be confused with Tom Robbins, the writer from the 80s, that we don't talk about it more. Let's talk a little bit about Tod Robbins himself. Tod Robbins was born in June of 1888. He was a writer. He wrote a number of other pieces of fiction, novels, and short stories, a number of which have been sort of pointed out as being particularly good. The other big thing that he wrote that you might maybe not have heard of, but you might know that's relation to, is he wrote the short story Spurs, which was the inspiration for the movie Freaks. And Freaks is from 1932. A lot of people say I've not seen Freaks, but a lot of people say that's a difficult movie to watch. Neither have I seen either of the Unholy 3 movie versions. If I watch those at some point, I'll probably come on here and talk about them. He also won $3,000 in 1922 for a writing contest for his story Fighting Mad for Physical Culture magazine. Isn't that interesting? He was married 5 times, which is a lot. He at some point immigrated to France, and during the Nazi occupation in France, he refused to leave and actually spent the war in a concentration camp. He passed away in 1949, not very long after this particular magazine was published. I think you should go find this novel. I think if you like Gothic fiction, if you like literary fiction, if you like horror, if you like weird fiction, you're going to like this story. You're going to find something to like about this story. And I'm going to say it now early that it's in the public domain. You can find a LibriVox recording of it. Actually, the reading by, I think it's Ben Tucker on YouTube is outstanding, right? Applause to Ben. If I haven't done it yet, which I don't think I have, I need to go over on that video and comment that. If you go over and listen to that, please let Ben know what a great job he did, because I think he did outstanding. I should also point out that this image has nothing to do with The Terrible 3. It must have something to do with one of the other stories that occurs in here. There's a couple of short stories as well. So we'll look at that. So let's open it up right here. Here we get like a little comic advertisement, some watches or jewelry, it looks like. Yeah. Here we have the contents of the novel, The Terrible 3, which is on page 8. Trying not to stress this here. We'll do this. On page 8, Mad Planet, which is on page 82, and Environment, which is on page 112. Murray Leinster and William Holloway. William Holloway sounds a little familiar, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% up on all my writers of this era. There's talking about a new Finlay folio, so there's a Virgil Finlay folio, I imagine. That sounds really great. Love Virgil Finlay stuff. Absolutely love it. It talks about the next issue. Here's an advertisement for U.S. savings bonds. Right. Of course, as Andrea points out, some of these advertisements are great. I don't know if we've got one of the. I don't know that the advertisements for that sort of like cultish organization that she always finds in Weird Tales is in here. If we see it or if somebody else sees it, let me know. We're moving too far ahead. And here it says, and I should also point out that there is just some absolutely gorgeous illustrations in here, and this is one of them. This is one of the characters from the story Echo. right? And he's got the little demon, as it's often called, that he sits on his shoulder. That's his mind. That's what he says. Yeah, and here we have a quote. The fantastic figure began to bound forward along the little moonlit path. So the story starts out with these circus performers, most specifically a dwarf, as the story calls him, Tweedledee, who's very short. We don't know quite how short Tweedledee is, but he's pretty small. And he's very angry, right? There's the human skeleton who is part of this troupe, and the human skeleton is just sort of like lounging around, and I guess he sort of has an expression that Tweedledee finds mocking, and Tweedledee is very angry, but his anger is very impotent because he's so small and so weak that he's not really able to express or to get anyone to take him seriously, right? Tweedledee, though, is slightly feared because he's good friends with Hercules, and Hercules is this rather dim but extremely strong man for the circus. And then they also have Echo, who is a expert ventriloquist. And Echo, this is who we're seeing here, has this little wooden demon that he likes to put on his shoulder, as he says, and that's his mind. So he often throws his voice and speaks through this wooden demon, who sort of is like his conscience or his inner thoughts, right? He feels a bit lost without his little demon. And as the story goes on, Tweedledee feels very angry at not being taken seriously. He's very frustrated, and during the performance that day, he feels mocked. A little boy, I think, comes up and pinches his cheek or something, and Tweedledee kicks him. And then, in the process of kicking this little boy, the father for this child comes up and starts beating on Tweedledee, and this angers Hercules, who goes into a rage and essentially causes utter havoc. Now, I will say this: that scene, for one, definitely, I absolutely saw this, and I don't know, I haven't verified this yet, so I'd have to make sure, but that scene and a couple other little things in this novel definitely reminded me of like Baldlanders and Dr. Talos from the Book of the New Sun, where you've got like this short, very intelligent sort of character who seems to be driving and in control of this very powerful body, right? We also see that as Master Blaster, and was it Mad Max 2? Is it 2? I think. So anyway, is it 2 or 3? I don't remember. Either one. So there's that. Now, I want to see if I can find this quote. Everyone who has the ability to love greatly also has the ability to hate greatly. Everyone who has the ability for great goodness also has the ability for great evil. A murderer is often a perverted hero. Tweedledee perceived that his heroism was ridiculed by his audience, turned to the other side of his nature. He must be considered serious at any cost. And this other self had answered him. This other evil self had spoken in a new, strange tongue. This other evil self, which had been sleeping, was now awake. Very gradually it had been growing in him for months. Very gradually it had been gaining the ascendancy in his mind, till now it sat enthroned in the crimson robes of sin, a monarch who called to life the evil spirits of his soul. Tweedledee, like all great egotists, must play a leading part on the stage of life, and if the audience was not pleased with him in the role of hero, if they laughed and hooted him off the boards, there was another part to play, as important, as serious, as awe-inspiring. If his personification of good had failed, his personification of evil should not fail. If his audience could not thrill to his heroism, it should tremble at his villainy. That too could hold the center of the stage. That too could clothe his naked ego. Yeah, it talks about Tweedledee, how for a long time he wanted to be a good person, but he wasn't, but he's sort of like, no one takes him seriously, so he sees like some kid getting beat up and he tries to intervene, but he himself gets beat up. And instead of like the press like saying, hey, he tried to help, he tried to do something, they mock him. They like ruthlessly mock him in the news. And he just feels as though he can't win. right? And he has this real anger at the world and everyone that is what eventually leads him into this life of crime. And there's a great quote, and I don't know if I'll find it. If I find it, I guess I'll do a quote at the beginning where it says, with all great villains, essentially, were really great heroes that were subverted somehow, right? The capacity for heroism is also equally a capacity for villainy, as though the greater a hero you have the chance, the more heroic and noble and good-natured you could be, the more evil you could be if subverted. And I really enjoy that theme, and it's consistent throughout this novel. So after this altercation with this fight at the carnival, obviously Tweedledee and Hercules, I think Hercules is beat up. I think he's eventually subdued and very angry. And Tweedledee, Hercules, and Echo decide to leave the circus, and they're going to do their own thing, leaving behind a rather grisly murder that Tweedledee sort of signs as Tweedledee. And I don't think we ever get Tweedledee or Hercules's or Echo's real names. Right. Here's some headache relief advertisement here. Yeah, and we have this, at the murder, we have this sign that Tweedledee writes, and it says, at this murder, which I think the image is coming up soon, it says, marked down and hung up by Tweedledee. And we'll come to that image here in a minute. And I absolutely think this image is amazing. Probably this is going to be the thumbnail for this video if I can make it work. So great and so evocative. And it says, I hate the darkness. I hate the specters that lurk in it. They will never speak. They will only stare and stare. And this is a reference to Echo, who is haunted by these voices that he hears, right? In the process of leaving, Tweedledee takes Echo's little demon that he wears on his shoulder, and he says, you don't, basically saying that you don't need this anymore. I will be your mind. I will be the mind for you. I don't know if Echo knows that Tweedledee has taken it or not, or if he thinks it's lost. So then the story shifts. We go to a new cast of characters, and we meet Hector MacDonald, who's a young man who wishes to be a writer, and his uncle has put him through school and really thinks that he needs to rethink this. You need to take life seriously. You shouldn't be a writer or an artist. And Hector says, you know what, forget it. You've supported me, but I'm going to go out and make it on my own. I'm going to do things my own way. And so his uncle is very upset with him. They have a bit of an altercation, or just like an argument. And essentially Hector says, well, I don't want your money or anything more to do with you, right? I'm going to go my own way, and we're not going to see each other anymore. And so he does, right? And Hector is in love with Dorothy, who is the daughter of a powerful businessman. And this businessman, Mr. Arlington, is not a fan of Hector, and he's really a bully. He really is. And he likes to bully his daughter Dorothy, who is very fierce and who he's a little bit afraid of when she gets angry, because he wants to see that aggressive spirit in her that he has. And so often do things and kind of instigate her and get her right to the threshold of being really truly furious with him before he backs off and subverts it, right? He gets sort of a perverse pleasure out of this, right? But he likes it because he wants to nurture that fighting spirit. He wants to instill that in her, even though he is essentially abusing her, right? Just not exactly berating her, but just literally trying to instigate fights with her, verbal arguments with her, just to get her riled up, right? And he does this with a lot of people. And so now young Hector, who has really no money and who's going to write stories, going to start submitting stories because he wants to marry Dorothy, but he needs to have some sort of money at this point, right? And so now Hector is going to, as sort of as a gesture, he wants to get a parrot or a talking bird for Dorothy's nephew, right? And because he wants a talking bird, so he goes to this bird shop, and in this bird shop is this old woman and this little baby that she has with her. And this old woman is like, oh, I have all these parrots. And so, she has these two parrots, a pirate parrot who has like all these pirate quotes, and a philosopher parrot, right? And these parrots have these long-winded, like sort of soliloquies that they'll give, And so the philosopher is a little too somber for Hector, so he picks the pirate parrot. He buys this parrot and he gives it to Dorothy's nephew. And as the story goes on, our character Hector, who's our main character, is really struggling, unable to sell stories, says some things that could be strewn as being sort of criminally suggestive, as though he might do something, because he sort of makes this argument that no one will buy his stories, but yet people will buy these terrible stories by people who are popular. And the way they get popular is by being salacious, these guys who commit crimes, and all of a sudden these newspapers and magazines will buy these stories from these criminals, but they won't have anything to do with him, right, who writes much better stories, or at least he perceives that they are, because he's not a criminal. And he's like, if only I was a criminal and could be proven innocent, then I could sell these stories, and this whole discussion, right? There's so many instances in this story where I felt like the prose just soared. It was so good, such great introspective writing. When the narrative sort of like a scene happens, in the middle of a scene, we get a bit of like introspection about the scene from the narrator's point of view, just an omnipotent narrator basically. That I thought were absolutely excellent. I mean, it to me, when I say that it's like Steinbeck, I really feel like that. I mean, this is written like literature. I'm just paging through the text. Yes, here's that thing that happens where the Tweedledee and Hercules and sort of Echo sort of get implicated in this murder early in the book, and here's where Tweedledee pins a sign to him. It says, marked down and hung up by Tweedledee. And he pins that to his jacket, and they discover this corpse in the window of this sort of department store in the morning and wonder what this sign means. Great stuff. Now, again, I don't want to just keep telling you this, like the synopsis of the story. I will say this. I wasn't sure at first, but there's a moment in this story where I had kind of like an aha moment or an epiphany. I thought, oh, I know what's happening. And maybe you've already heard it from my synopsis, right? But I really thought that it was not very telegraphed, right? I thought that the story was very good about not trying to be super obscure or really hide it, but also not being obvious about it. I thought it was super well done, and I think it's so well developed. Hello, my name is Virgil. You might know me from some of my other videos. For example, Always Stay Virgil. I can't believe it's not Virgil. Virgil Fights a Shark. The sequel, A Shark Fights Virgil, and the end of that trilogy, Shark and Virgil Fight Virgil Shark. Now, you could also know me from this video that you're watching right now. That's possible. Or one of my other videos. I have a few on here. Anyway, I neglected to say in this particular video, although neglected is perhaps the wrong word, perhaps strategically decided in a sort of subconscious level to not warn you about spoilers. So if you want to skip ahead and you don't want the story to be spoiled, go ahead and do that. There'll be some timestamps, either probably on the screen or down in the chapter selection, so you can do that. I do kind of feel like it's not. I don't think this book is predicated on those spoilers, or whether you see them or not. But to any event, if it's something you don't like to have happen, then that's an option for you. I did watch the movie since I'm on here. Since I have you, by the way, since I have your attention, let me just say I did watch the movie with the original silent film with Lon Chaney, The Unholy 3, and it's not bad, but it is a very different take. I'll just say that. I didn't mind it. I didn't think it was particularly great. I didn't dislike it. I'm not saying it's bad. I just didn't think that it really did justice to the book. Lon Chaney plays the character of Echo in the movie, and it's a very different take on Echo. In fact, the story is about Echo in the movie and not about Hector. and Dorothy and their relationship and what's going on. Really, it was much more about Hector in the book. And I don't really think that was the best choice. In fact, they really downplay Hector in the movie, which I didn't like as much, but it's what it is. Anyways, I think that's it. I think that's all. Well, who knows? Maybe I'll do another one of these in this video if I need to. And this might even be edited out. Thank you very much. Back to your regularly scheduled video. If you've ever seen that like Looney Tunes cartoon, right, with the baby gangster, right, who this gangster who's very short, who's supposed to be based on Babyface Nelson, right, the criminal that broke John Dillinger out of prison or something, or out of jail, right? That's seemingly who that character is supposed to be imitating. But of course, Babyface Nelson was a little shorter, and he had a youthful looking face. But that's it. Yeah, I think that comes from the story. That gangster who dresses up like a baby and is a convincing baby, and that's his entry point into people's houses to steal from them, and in some cases, in fact, most cases, murder them, is what Tweedledee, Hercules, and Echo do. Echo is a somewhat unwilling participant, right? If you don't know already, Echo is dressing up like this old woman in this bird shop, and she's making these parrots talk, but when people get them home, of course, they don't. Because Echo's that good at throwing his voice. And Echo has a feminine-esque face, and so dressed as an old lady, somewhat convincing. Tweedledee, of course, is this baby, right, that Hector sees all the time. He actually makes a habit out of going to this bird shop and like talking here. These are like his only friends when now that he's sort of down on his luck, and sees this baby all the time and never realizes that this baby is Tweedledee pretending. And of course, later on, you sort of like finally put those pieces together when you meet Uncle Harry, who's Hercules, right, this giant man. And these are just like the way that they subsisted. These sort of getting people, like dropping Tweedledee dressed up as a baby on somebody's doorstep, and then these people take Tweedledee inside and they're like, oh, we'll keep this baby and call the police in the morning. And then Tweedledee is sort of the entry point into the house for someone, right? Hector says some things when he's frustrated, right, that later become incriminating because they mirror some of the things that Tweedledee does, right? You could say that there's a bit of like coincidence going on there. Serendipity is the wrong word. Serendipity is good, but whatever the bad form of serendipity is, like really unfortunate coincidence going on. But I think that I think it works. Where sometimes that might not, like for example in Wieland, it felt a bit contrived. It does not feel contrived here, even though I think you could look at it that way. I never felt it was contrived. It felt right. It felt natural. It felt like that's what's going on. It felt correct. And at some point they plan this murder for Hector's uncle, and they frame Hector for it, and Hector is arrested. And of course, he says, I have an alibi. I have these people that I've been speaking with for a year now, right, at this bird shop, never knowing that these are the people who had committed the crime. Of course, he had spoken with Echo many times as the old lady who ran this bird shop, and Hector and Echo had really come to be affectionate to him, right? Really didn't want harm to come to him. And so, that sort of leads into an eventual sort of like unraveling of this mystery. Yeah, so we've got this great sort of suspense thriller story going on, this mystery, a crime thing happening, right? All this gothic imagery, just so good. And it could have been easy at the end of this, right? At the end with the trial, and there's a discovery and an arrest and everything that happens there. And there's a great sort of like compassion that Tod Robbins introduces to his villains, right? These very villainous and nasty characters. There's this great compassion that he has for them, right? Not that they're okay with doing what they did, but that he really portrays them as being hurt and damaged in some way, right? And that Tweedledee just wanted someone to take him seriously, and no one would take him seriously when he tried to be good, so he decided to be evil. But even in that, he is refuted, right? Even when he's committing these crimes, and then he has this journal that he writes them down in, and it's discovered, and he makes this outrageous confession where he confesses all his crimes at the end. Even then, he's not taken seriously. And there's the whole thing that happens at the end that I'm not going to spoil. But I think it was really great. And that writing, it would have been easier to say, at the end of the trial, this sort of thing, and that's it. And I think that there's another scene or two that happened that I thought were just beautiful and so intelligently written. Go find this. Now we're just going to keep flipping through this. So here's The Mad Planet by Murray Leinster. Right? I love these illustrations, by the way. If I haven't already said that, which I did. But just great. I just, in reading this, just was so impressed with Tod Robbins' writing. Like I said, his ability to introduce a theme and maintain that theme and sort of like keep supporting that theme within the narrative. And then like that theme keeps moving around to the different characters, and you see these certain ideas like get rethought and re-expressed in the behavior of these different characters and what's going on. Wow. I really was impressed. I really do feel like it's that good. I really do. I don't feel any reservations in making those claims. And this is another fantastic illustration here. We're getting to the very end. Not a lot to see in this. It's fantastic. This is more of a novel than anything else. Here's fantastic novels. You can get the next issue, The 7 Footprints to Satan by A. Merritt. A. Merritt. I think I've heard. I know A. Merritt. Yeah. I don't think I've read anything by A. Merritt, but yeah. Version. Here's some other stuff. These are some. It looks like these are like letters and things. That might be cool to come back and read and talk about. If there's interest in that, let me know. We can come back and look at this again. I don't mind doing it. I just don't want. I feel like I might overstay my welcome here with this idea if I just stay in it too long. I did not see this infamous weird cult advertisement in here. If it was in here, I didn't see it. Then there's an advertisement here in the end for The Night Has 1,000 Eyes. Pretty cool. There's some great themes with the characters, as though Tweedledee is the mind, and Hercules is the body, and then Echo is the voice. And then there's a discussion that Echo has about what is a voice without a mind or a body. There's a very interesting discussion there that I think was sort of like touched on a bit in Charles Brockden Brown's Wieland. I feel like that discussion sort of this is sort of like an evolution of that discussion, like almost as though Tod Robbins had read that, thought about it, and then reintroduced it, and I think maybe a little bit better than it was maybe fully realized in Wieland. I felt like it was really inspired. I feel like this was maybe slightly inspired by that, or the character of Echo was, but although that's not the only thing that going on in the story. I really enjoyed it, and again, that sort of ventriloquism thing, which might seem a little forced in Wieland, I think in here works very well. I have every intention of reading more Tod Robbins. I really, 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 for the how many times I've said no, recommend that you go find something by Tod Robbins. Now, old prints of the Unholy 3 are unholily priced, right? We're talking car prices, right? Like thousands. This was not too expensive for me, but you can see it's not in great shape. I believe there are more modern reprints that are not too expensive. Also, remember, public domain, so you can go on, I believe you can go on, Internet Archive. I'm pretty sure that I found a download there for Internet Archive where you can read that. I think it even has some pictures from the silent film with Lon Chaney in it. Also, like I said, LibriVox has a recording. I'm going to link that recording read by Ben Tucker. I think Ben did an amazing job. Please tell Ben how good he did, if you enjoyed that. I think he could use the praise. Not that he isn't. It'd be nice if he got the praise. Let's put it like that. Put it like that. As a finale, this is the best thing that I can remember reading that I hadn't already read, right? We're not going to count like stuff I've already read before and rereads. Since I read Musashi, maybe? I don't think I've read anything this good. Of course, a very different thing. I really did feel like I was reading something by Steinbeck that I didn't know about, right? It's just that damn good. Thanks very much. Like and subscribe helps. There's a support link if you're interested. That's it. Bye.